When you take a look at the night sky, you must have definitely noticed that slightly orangey bright dot. Yes, Mars. For thousands of years, we looked at it from afar, wrote legends about it, and finally sent our own machines all the way there. But today, in this guide of ours, we are leaving those complex, boring academic details aside. Our goal is much more exciting. We will talk about how we will actually live there, and how we will stand shoulder to shoulder to make that dusty and cold planet our second home. Let's start with that biggest question on our minds. Will Mars truly become our new home? Or will it remain a dusty piece of rock forever? Honestly, this is not just an ordinary astronomy question. It is a giant existential puzzle that will shape the destiny of humanity. We are digging the surface with our own robots and all, which is great. But the real deal is this. Will we one day establish our own colony? Eat tomatoes? We grew ourselves there and truly be able to breathe? Let's take a closer look at the potential of this red planet and our future there. I'm sure it has crossed all of your minds. I mean, the moon is right there under our noses, just a 3-day journey away with advanced rockets. So why do we stubbornly want to risk that harsh journey that will take months just to go to Mars? The answer actually lies in how similar Mars is to us. For instance, take a look at the length of a day. It's unbelievable, but a day on Mars lasts exactly 24 hours and 37 minutes. Meaning, when you set foot on those red lands in the future, your biological clock will never disrupt. Just like on Earth, you will wake up in the morning, drink your coffee, and go to your hydroponic greenhouses or laboratories. For the human body and psychology, this is literally a priceless advantage. Of course, the similarities are not limited to just the length of the day. Mars has distinct seasons, just like Earth. Massive water ice reserves are hidden just beneath the surface. And did you know that billions of years ago it had a bright blue sky, just like our Earth? Mars is like a giant mirror showing us our past, but at the same time, if we use the right technology, it shows our future home as well. Once we establish the infrastructure, we will be able to extract that underground ice and convert it into both our drinking water and that powerful hydrogen fuel to fire up our rockets. In other words, the resources are just there, waiting for us to process them. Of course, let's admit that getting there is not as easy as just buying a ticket and going. We start with a massive landing engineering that turns the laws of physics upside down. Space engineers call this process the 7 minutes of terror. Just imagine, you plunge into the atmosphere at kilometers per second. The outside turns into a fireball, and because of that signal delay with Earth, everything has to be completely autonomous. Massive rovers like Perseverance handle this landing all by themselves with their own artificial intelligence, without even a tiny bit of help from us. It is truly mind-boggling technology. Because the truth of the matter is this. You know how they always say, a single mistake can cause $1 million dream to turn into dust and smoke. In the future, when we land our manned living modules on those red lands, our margin of error will literally and strictly be zero. That is exactly why the future engineers among you are already working day and night to perfect those AI systems and landing rockets. Now imagine that you achieved that flawless landing, put on your flight suits, and opened the hatch of the ship. Do you know what kind of scenery awaits you when you take your first step outside? A world where all scales are turned upside down. Do you know the biggest irony of it all? Mars is actually only about half the size of Earth. It is a tiny planet, but the mountains, craters, and geographical structures on it are literally colossal. We are facing a massive geography squeezed into a tiny body. In the future, the slopes of those giant mountains will serve as shields for our colonies. Let's make a comparison then, and you will understand very well what I mean. That famous Mount Everest, which we call the summit of the world and takes months to climb, is about 8.8 kilometers high, right? So, how high do you think the Olympus Mons volcano on Mars is? Hold on tight, it is exactly 21 kilometers. We are talking about the largest known volcano in the solar system. Not only its height, but its width is also mind blowing. Olympus Mons has such a massive base that you could just drop the entire country of France onto that base and it would fit comfortably. But how did this planet, which is half our size, manage to produce a mountain of such incredible size? The answer lies in the planet's geological structure, or more precisely, in tectonic plates. As you know, there are plates on our Earth that constantly move and create earthquakes, but Mars doesn't have this. The surface is completely stationary. Consequently, when a volcano starts to erupt, those lavas accumulate on top of each other at the exact same spot for millions or billions of years without ever shifting. And the result is these tremendously massive structures. In the future, this geological stability of Mars will actually provide unshakable, secure foundations for our colonies. Sure, looking at massive mountains is nice, but they don't fill stomachs. We need water. Water. The answer to that frequently asked question, was there water on Mars, lies in the giant scars on the planet's surface. For example, let's take the Valles Marineris Canyon. If you were to take this canyon and place it over the USA, one end would be in New York and the other end all the way in Los Angeles. The Grand Canyon, which we think is humongous, would look like a tiny ditch in the backyard next to it. A giant mark splitting an entire continent from end to end. So, what do you think created these unbelievable canyons? The wind? No, water. Dried up giant riverbeds, cataclysmic floods that literally carved the surface of the planet, and maybe even the waves of an ancient ocean. Yes, Mars used to be quite wet, and a place where water was on the surface. But the best part of it is this, that water did not disappear completely. In the future, we will reach those giant ice masses underground with our autonomous digging vehicles, extract that ice, and succeed in pumping it directly into the heart of our living habitats. Our water is completely ready. Sure, talking about those beautiful, wet days of the past is pleasant, but we also need to face today's realities a bit. If we're going to make Mars our home, we must accept it with its somewhat grumpy and brutal state of today. Actually, when you hear that the temperature at the equator can rise up to 20 degrees Celsius at noon, you might say, oh well, great spring weather, we can even walk around in t-shirts. Sounds very comforting, doesn't it? But that peace lasts only until the sun goes down. The moment the sun disappears from the horizon, the temperature plunges to minus 70 degrees within seconds. A total shock. Right here is exactly where we will put our engineering genius to work. Without our smart thermal suits that automatically balance our astronauts' body temperatures within seconds, or our underground modules built with perfect insulation, we cannot cope with this cold. But don't worry, the technologies we will use to overcome this are already on the table. If only it were just the cold. Global dust storms that last for months and engulf the entire planet, a toxic air full of carbon dioxide, a paper-thin atmosphere, and zero natural protection against that deadly radiation coming from space. The conditions are harsh, I admit, but will these stop us? Never. You young engineers will build wonderful radiation-proof domes by using the Martian soil with those massive 3D printers. Inside those domes, we will establish our closed-loop ecosystems with hydroponic greenhouses and produce our own food. While doomsday is breaking outside and storms are raging, we will be building a brand new, heartwarming civilization inside those safe habitats. At the end of everything, we must turn around and ask ourselves this question. Will we brave the dust, the freezing cold, and that intense radiation, and finally be able to call this red planet our home? Thanks to the smart habitats, autonomous systems we will build in the future, and most importantly, your never-ending desire to explore, our answer is definitely a huge yes. Mars might have once looked like a cold and distant prison from the outside, but in the light of science, it is a candidate to become humanity's heartwarming second home. Keep looking at the stars, keep wondering, and keep building our future. That planet is waiting for us.